Greetings, everybody. Today is the 1st of May, and this day is generally known as the Workers' Day. So, on that basis and context, I want us to look into something that I see to be very important, especially when it comes to the workers, and that is the class consciousness. The first thing we'll do is for us to look at the definition of just what class consciousness is, and then after that, we will look into the main two big classes that we have in society, and then after that, we will look at how do these two classes relate to each other, and then finally, since it is the workers' day, we will then look at how can the working class survive, flourish, and as well as prosper in that very system where these two classes lives or live rather. So now, in order for us to define what the class consciousness is, we might have a lot of different definitions, but I will keep mine limited to three things. So, and I would define it as one's awareness of your class in terms of its position, interest, and how it relates to the other classes that live in the very same system. So, since we are looking at the Workers' Day and we would want to look at the working class consciousness, then we can define that as the workers' awareness of their position, interest, as well as how they relate to the other classes that are found in the very same system where they are. And the main two classes that we have in society, and this is worldwide, we do have the powerful class, but unfortunately numerically low. So this means that this class is very powerful, but in terms of numbers, people who are found in that class are very few. So that is what we call the capitalists, or otherwise bourgeoisie. So these people are the one that own capital, are the one that own factories, are the one that controls the economy. However, when it comes to numbers, these people are very few. Okay, and then the second class is then what we call the working class or the proletariats. So now these people a lot in terms of numbers. However, they are always put at the lower structure of the hierarchy in as far as the societal hierarchy is concerned. And now, who or what is the working class? We can then define this as anybody who need to work in order for them to survive. If you wake up every day to go and work so that you are able to get your monthly salary or wage, so that you are able to go and pay your bills, then you belong to the working class. But it's also very important for us to note that the working class is not only limited to people who go and work, but we also include those people who don't, the unemployed people. They also form part of the working class, because at the end of the day, in order for these people to survive, all they need is to go sell their labor, get paid for that, and then they go and pay their bills. So generally, the working class, we just mean that if you go and work, or you need to work in order for you to survive, then you belong to this class that we call the working class or the proletariat. Okay, so now those are the two classes we have, the capitalists as well as the working class. The capitalists being those few individuals who own capital and who controls the economy worldwide. We call them the capitalists. And in terms of numbers, these people are very few. And then the other class is known as the working class, and this is a class of people who need to work, who need to sell their labor in order for them to survive. Those are the two classes that we have in the world. But of course, your financial institutions like World Bank and so on, they might be giving you some sort of categories of people's classes in the world, like your higher income, middle income, lower income, and so on. But at the end of the day, if we want to categorize these classes properly, then we can locate them into the working class versus the capitalist. So those are the two classes, big two classes that we have. And people like Karl Marx, they would always tell us more about these classes and how they relate to each other. And that is now the next point that we need to move into. How does the capitalist relate to the working class and the vice versa? So now what we need to look at, and we need to begin with the capitalists. Remember, when you're talking about capitalists, this type of word is derived from the word capital. And capital has now two types or forms, which is a money capital as well as capital good. Now, money capital just being money, whether now is soft money or hard money, but money capital simply just mean money. And then whereas capital good would mean anything that we buy using money. And then in this context, because we're looking at the working class versus the capitalists, we now mean that these machineries and the other things that the capitalists buy in order for them to run businesses, factories, and so on. So that is what we are looking at. So now it would mean these capitalists, these are the people with capital. And then in terms of economic system, these are people now who believe in the private ownership of the economy, so that they are able to, and their participation in that economy is now motivated by the ability for them to make as much profit as possible at the expenses of anything and everything. So now these capitalists, all they do is that they own capital. Okay, so they have money and they have machineries and factories and so on. But a machine cannot make money unless there is someone who operate on it, and that someone would be the worker. So this means that the capitalists are unable to make money if they do not have the workers to help in working for them. That is what we are looking at. And generally, machineries, as I indicated, they cannot make money for you unless you do have workers to operate on them, and then you are able to make your money out of whatever you produce and you make with those machineries. Now, how these classes relate to each, because they need each other. So the working class needs the capitalists, so they work for them, get paid, and then they go and pay their bills. But on the other side, the capitalists also need the working class to work for them in order for them to make money. So these two classes generally needs each other. But now their relationship between these two classes is that the capitalists always want, and they do that always, they exploit the working class so that they are able to make money out of this exploitation. And remember, the participation of the capitalists into the economy is that they need to exploit the working class so that they are able to make money. So now the relationship between the working class as well as the capitalists is very toxic, number one. Number two, is very exploitative, and is very inhuman as well. I think those are the 3 points I want to look at. So this means that a capitalist does not really care about the interest, humanity of a worker. What they care is that this worker must come and work for them so that they are able to make profit. And anything else that concerns this worker, they don't really care. For as long as the worker show up in the morning, work for them, and then at the end of the day, these capitalists are able to make money, then that is enough for them. And now, the working class on the other side, they also want to live a good life. They also want to flourish. They also want to prosper. But then the capitalists, who is their employers at times, they do not want that to happen. Therefore, as a result, you look at people like Karl Marx, for instance, talks about class struggle to say that these two classes are always in constant confrontation, because their interests contradict each other, and at the end of the day they would always be fights here and there. That's why you see at workplaces you would see protests and strikes, because the workers want to demand a fair share of what they work on. But now the capitalists, they are not interested in giving that fair share to the workers. Therefore, as a result, their relationship between these two classes is that very toxic, is that very exploitative, and is that very inhuman. And that's why you would see, for instance, someone owns a company, and this person is very rich. They have houses in all the towns. They have they have cars, and they are living well on daily basis. But if you look into the workers, people who work for this person, they cannot even afford to host a proper Christmas day for their families, because the amount of money they get as compensation for their labor is literally not enough, and it does not also speak to the quality of the labor that you put in. So this means, for instance, when you work for a company, let me say 8 hours per day, and the company always, sometimes tells you how much they pay you per hour. Let me say they pay you $15 per hour. So that is not the value of the labor that you put in. So the labor that you put in probably even worth $30 per hour, but you don't get that. So what your employer does, who's a capitalist, is that they take some of what you are supposed to get, keep it to themselves, and then they give you sometimes very little of what you work on. That's why people who believe into the welfare of the working class would want the workers to be working, but they must own the factories in which they work, and then the profit that they get there, they got to share properly. So that would be only way in which the working class would then survive. Okay, I don't know if I did justice to the relationship between the working class as well as the capitalists, but generally what I'm saying is that their relationship between these two classes is very toxic, is very exploitative, but is also very inhuman. That is how these two classes relate to each other. Now, we then look at the final point that we need to make is, how can then the working class survive, flourish in this system of how they relate to the capitalist? And there might be a lot of innovations and ways in which the working class can generally survive, but due to the time limit, I can only give two ways, but there are a lot of them in which the working class can really just survive. Now, the first one that I would want to give is to say that if we happen to instill proper class consciousness in the workers, we might find ourselves at a stage where the workers know their position in the system, they know their interests, and they know how they relate to the other class, which is the capitalist. And as soon as we do that, then the workers are able to know when they are being cheated, when they are being exploited, when they are being treated inhuman, and all of that, and how best they can act in order for them to protect their interests, humanity, dignity, and all of that. We can do that if we instill proper class consciousness amongst the working class, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm of the strong opinion that the working class lacks class consciousness. Like, they don't know their interests, they don't know their position, they also don't know how their relationship with the capitalist is, and then at the end of the day they are just there operating without really proper understanding of that of those three aspects that I just mentioned. Now, the importance of us strengthening class consciousness of the working class is very fundamental in such a way that For instance, you would find trade unions. Some of the trade unions are even run by workers themselves from certain sectors. You might find that um, trade unions in the mining sector, they're literally being run by mine workers. You might find trade union like Nantu, for instance, they're literally being run by teachers. And it goes to retail and all those other type of workers. But the way the representative in these unions negotiate, the way they see their employers is completely from a different angle as far as the working class is concerned. They are not always talking to the needs, to the position, and to the aspiration of these workers. You will see that these trade unions, they are literally in bed with the employers, but they ought to know that you can't be in bed with the employer, because the employer, who's a capitalist, is only interested in maximizing their profit. They are not interested in your dignity. They are not interested in your welfare, in your development, and all of that. The only thing they are interested in is that you wake up every day, you come to work, you work, profit is made, and then these capitalists get their share of it. That is what they are interested in. But then the way these trade unions, for instance, who represent the workers, the way they see employers, I don't know, they see them as partners and whatnot. But that is not really the case. The case is that the capitalists, all they are interested in is that show up every morning, work for me, so that I'm able to maximize profit. Then I make money as much as I can. So now the weak consciousness of the working class and their trade unions is then something that is stopping these workers from improving their position in society, also improving their welfare in society. The moment we work on class consciousness, then we are able to change a lot of things. So the second one, which will be the last one, is then that the working class need to be aware that they are the majority in terms of society. Like a lot of people in society, they fall under the working class. And if these people happen to organize them properly and take over state power, then they are able to change the conditions of the workers. Okay? So now this means that you might find yourself in any political organization or political party and all of that, but the fact remains that for as long as you part of the working class, your struggle, your conditions, they remain the same. It means that you must, get a house that you must pay off over 20 years, while these capitalists, they probably buy their houses just within few months of the money that they get out of their operations. But you, wherever you find yourself, you just, your struggle, your conditions, your everything is just the same. Now, what is very important is that if their working class can unite, if these people who find themselves in the working class, if they can unite and say, look, as the working class, this is our interest, this is our position, this is our welfare. So now why can't we unite? And then at the end of the day, push an agenda that seeks to improve our position, welfare, dignity, and all of that. If these people unite, then at the end of the day, they are able to improve their condition, welfares, and all of that. So now what we see today is that people who are in power, for instance, they are also being controlled by the capitalists, because the capitalists have money. And when you see people who are coming from the working class, for instance, taking up positions and authorities, but when they get there, they forget about their condition. They forget about the conditions of the working class. They then go out there and make decisions that don't favor the working class, because they are being controlled by the capitalists, because the capitalists, they want to keep on these things of domination and control of society, where they must control everybody, where all of us must wake up in the morning to go sell our labor, but what we get in return does not reflect our effort that we put in forms of labor. So now the working class, if it can organize itself to take over, state power, then at the end of the day, they are able to deliver and make sure that their interests are being, favored. Not these things. Even today, in Namibia, for recent 35 years of flag independence, we still have workers who are being exploited, workers who are working without contracts, workers who are being underpaid. And the system and those who are in power seems not to care about that, because generally, like I said, once they get there, they're being controlled by the capitalists. They don't care about the working class anymore. And that is something that the working class need to know, that the earlier they organize themselves, take over state power, definitely through, because the most easiest way and convenient way now, there might be a lot of ways how they can take over power, but an electoral process seems to be viable at the moment. So it's easy for the workers to do that. All they need to do is to ensure that when they go to polling station to vote, they know which political organization represent their interests as the workers, and which one is in bed with the capitalists. And then from there, once now they take over power with their organization that believe in the working class and will empower the working class, they also need to have systems and mechanisms in place in which they can make sure that these people, they do not divert, they do not change their character and their consciousness in as far as the working class is concerned. Because, for instance, you would find people who are very good. They understand the working class, their struggle, welfare, and how they are being treated. But once they get into power, then they forget about that. They begin also to act like they are capitalists. So you don't want that. You also need to make sure that this working class does have mechanisms and processes in place to ensure that once their organization that believe in the working class takes over, then this organization keep it is position, it keeps it is a consciousness, and then it keeps it is content and character without changing, because now they are in power. So those are the two strategies that the working class can do in order for it to improve its conditions and welfare, dignity, and all of that. And those two strategies are: number one, if we are able to improve working class consciousness, because remember, battles are not really won by few individuals. So if everybody understand their role and duty that they can play in the struggle, then the struggle become a little bit easier. But then when you are leading, like you are maybe a leader of the working class, but the people that you are leading, they literally do not have class consciousness, then at the end of the day, it will become difficult for you. Because, for instance, you look in a society where a government keeps parents unemployed, and then the very same government comes and give the parents, the kids of these parents, social grant of 250, 350, whatever amount. Then you find this parent is very happy that their child is getting social grant, because this parent does not understand that if I was employed as a parent, then this government does not need to give my child social grant, because I'll be able to take care of my child. And this happens because of poor working class consciousness amongst our people. It even go as far as this thing of old age pension money. So you'd find yourself that a grandmother in a house is getting whatever money they get. Let's say even if we say that money is 5,000 that a grandmother gets in a house, but the very same grandmother in her house, there are 5 graduates with university degrees and they are unemployed. Now, this grandmother, when they hear that the government want to increase their pension money, but the government is not talking about employing these 5 graduates in her house, the grandmother will be very happy to say that, okay, now my money is being increased to, okay, like in Namibia, people are talking about the 3,000. It's being increased from the current amount to a 3,000. The grandmother is very happy with that. And they will also be very happy with that particular government to say the government is working. They are increasing my pension money. But at the end of the day, this grandmother does not understand that if this particular government happened to employ these 5 graduates in my house, I might not even need any pension money, because my pension money at the moment, I'm only being able to take care of these grandchildren of mine in my house, and that 3,000 will not make any difference, because it has a lot of people who depend on it. But in the moment these 5 people happen to get jobs, they are able to take care of you as a grandmother and everybody else in your house, because they are a lot. They are 5, and their salary might even go as far as 15,000, 20,000. Just imagine if you have 5 people and their salary maybe after deduction is 15,000 or 18,000. Then how much will you get in your house? It's a lot of money, and is able to cater for your needs in the house, as opposed to one grandmother with a 3,000 taking care of 7 people in the house. It does not help anything. But because of poor class consciousness, those people don't understand that increasing pension money does not make any difference. The something happens now in, I think budget is under discussion, and I see civil servants are asking, are we getting any salary increment? And a lot of them think that getting salary increment is much more important compared to creating more jobs. Like, civil servants think that is very important that the government rather increase their salaries as opposed to creating jobs for the unemployed. They don't understand that because of poor class consciousness, to say that it does not make any difference that as a father, your salary is increased maybe with just $1,000, but you still have your 3 maybe to 4 kids, or children in your house, and these people are unemployed. So it's better for the government to create job opportunity for these kids of yours that are unemployed, and they are able to take care of themselves, and they are also able to contribute to solving some of the needs in your house. So now the fact that we do not understand that as the working class, to say I do not need in salary increment at the moment. What I need is dependency ratio to be reduced, so that I do not have a lot of people who depend on my salary, because they also have their own salaries now. So those are the things that we are looking at. I think we have taken much of our time here talking about working class and all of that. But because it's the Workers' Day, I just thought it's very important for us to spend a few of this time to talk about the working class consciousness, and that might help us to look into the understanding of our working class in relation to their position, in relation to their interests, and in relation to how they relate to the capitalists as a class that also exists in a system where the working class lives. With that being said, I just want to wish you well on this Workers' Day, and I'm encouraging everybody else who belong to the working class to try by all means necessary to contribute to the working class consciousness. Like, it's very important that we sharpen our working class consciousness, but also make sure that we awaken those people who might not understand the working class consciousness. With that being said, thank you very much for listening to me. Let me hear your views and what you think of the working class, and it is your duty as someone who belongs to the working class to go out there and awaken much of the workers, in order for them to understand the struggle, the position, the welfare of the working class in Namibia, as well as elsewhere in the world where you might find yourself. Thank you very much, and let's enjoy the Workers' Day.